we go! Here we go! Here we go!
We're gonna have a fiery Sterling today.
Well, no, you just have a big old air horn, and anytime a Packers fan tries to talk, you just hit the button and drown them out. Like, no, I can't hear you. Go Bears.
It's basically the la 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 la.
Yeah, exactly. Right? You don't even have to live there. You can do it from here. Just remote control everything. Yeah, I'm pissed off, man. Fuck the NFL at this point.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk podcast. We are officially in the swing of week number 1. We've already had 2 games this season. Tomorrow on Sunday, it's going to be pretty much the full slate, and football, it's so nice to have it back. College is going on right now, but first off, Sterling, how you doing today, my friend?
Yeah, man, it's back. It was luckily slow enough on Thursday while I was at work that I was able to watch some of the games. So, I mean, hopefully, as much as we like viewers, I hope my managers aren't viewers and find that out. So that was a fun game to watch. And then, unfortunately, I caught something at work because, some idiots like to come to work while they're sick. And so I was home yesterday to be able to watch the Friday night game. So, yeah, it's so far 2 games down. 2 really good football games to watch. I expect tomorrow we're going to have a whole lot more good football, especially when we get to that Sunday nighter. The afternoon game slate all look really good as well. It's we're back, man. So I apologize to anybody. I will likely be a little lesser on my responses. I likely won't rant as much as I usually do just because I'm a little under the weather and I don't want to lose my voice before we're finished.
Yeah, and the 2 games that we got to watch this weekend were very, very different games, I would say, in kind of what we saw with the Eagles versus Ravens game. It was kind of more of like your traditional, almost like prize fight of where it was 2 teams that were very well matched up against each other, kind of just going at their best pace. And
Yeah.
again, we'll start with the Thursday game, Ravens versus the Chiefs. Both of us, we chose the Chiefs to win this game. I chose the Chiefs on the spread, and you chose the Ravens on the spread. So I'm 2-0 for that one, and you are 1-1 in that regard. But this was a game where we knew the Ravens were coming in hungry. They were coming in motivated to kind of almost redeem themselves of what happened last year. And this game pretty much was the exact same game that we saw in the AFC Championship game, with the one exception of the Chiefs have Xavier Worthy, and that kid, I tweeted about this morning, how the hell did the Buffalo Bills just allow the Kansas City Chiefs to have Xavier Worthy? And the reason why I tweeted that out is because I saw a stat that over the last 2 seasons, Mahomes has only had 2 passing touchdowns where the throw was over 30 or 20 yards. And again, the last time that he's actually had it on a regular basis was Tyreek Hill. He's already had 1 this season. It's like, thanks Buffalo. Thanks for just giving him Tyreek Hill 2.0.
Right. Well, and I mean that they're the culprits that gave him Patrick Mahomes as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Buffalo Bills are really, really good at building teams as long as it's not Buffalo. They're really good at helping the Chiefs build a good team.
They're really good at helping build a dynasty, but that dynasty just so happens to be the Chiefs. It's just,
yeah.
We talk about how the Bills needed to get wide receivers, and they drafted Keon Coleman this year. I think it was the first pick in the second round because they traded back with the Chiefs and then they traded back with the Panthers. And it's like, okay, Keon Coleman, we think he's going to be a good receiver, but you could have just stayed there, drafted Xavier Worthy, and you would have gotten Tyreek Hill yourself, and you wouldn't have given the Chiefs that guy. Now, the Chiefs still would have drafted a wide receiver with their first round pick, but the question is, who would it have been? And we all know what Andy Reid is like when he has a speedster, Deshaun Jackson. We know he was a top level guy. He made the 5th round pick Tyreek Hill into a difference maker. And Yeah, man, it was. This game was really weird to watch because of how many penalties there were on the offensive line, and just the Ravens not being able to get that lineup properly. And I know there's going to be a lot of Ravens fans that are going to sit back and go, "Oh, well, the Chiefs didn't get that." Well, the Chiefs did get penalties on the offensive line. Like, don't get me wrong. It's just, yeah, it was. It's going to be interesting to see how that's called this year, because even on the
Yep.
broadcast, they were saying this is going to be a call that is regularly called more often. They're going to be more stingy about it, which is fine. But a lot of Ravens fans and even a lot of the Ravens players were very annoyed with the refs, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with their anger.
I mean, I kind of do because you see a lot of instances where the Ravens got called on it basically every single time, and the Chiefs probably only got nailed with it maybe half the time, if that. And there were the few usual suspect false starts on the Chiefs that didn't get called as well, where the linemen are moving ahead of the snap, and it's
Jawan Taylor
you know
particularly.
there was a little bit of that favoritism towards the Chiefs that we've been seeing in the last few years with Patrick Mahomes being there. And so that is tough to swallow. I hope they get that under control before we reach the playoffs this year.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, it was still a good game to watch. There was a lot of really solid offense, some decent defensive play. I'm not sure what the Ravens were thinking. They started out the game strong, running that option offense, and they were moving the ball really well. And then they just stopped using Derrick Henry, which was bizarre to me.
Yeah, they kind of showed us the offense that everyone expected this Ravens offense to be, which was a lot of option movement with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. And we kind of all sat back, and I know when I was watching it going like, "Oh, this is going to be the problem that we all thought it was going to be." And with on that first drive, we saw Lamar making some, nice simple throws, which is what we wanted to see from Lamar. But then after that drive, it was like, "Okay, we're going to go back to exactly what we were doing last year, which was we're going to try to throw the ball a little bit more, and Lamar is going to run it because he doesn't want to throw the ball." And again, some of those situations, I was just there was a few throws that Lamar made where I was like, okay, we're starting to see that improvement. But then there was also times where I'm just like, dude, like stop running. Like your pocket is fine. Like
Well, and not only that, but like even the play calling, like use Derrick Henry. You signed
yeah,
him for a reason. I know I had a small prop bet on him to have 15 carries or more, which I looked at and I went,
that easy
Derrick
money.
Henry should be touching the ball at least 15 times in a game if you have him on your team.
It
And he
20
didn't even reach that.
20 times a game.
Right? And he didn't even reach 15. So I was like, what are they doing? Because I know I watched that first drive and I was like, oh, fuck, the AFC is cooked.
Yep. Yep.
And then they just didn't go back to that bag the rest of the game.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, never mind. They found something. They were like, oh, this works too well. Let's not use it anymore, which
Dumb
seems
strategy.
to be their MO.
Yeah, I just I found myself so many times watching this game going, people are talking about Lamar Jackson being this elite level quarterback, and I think Lamar Jackson is an elite playmaker. Like
Yeah.
I will never not say that he's an elite playmaker. I thought him winning the MVP award last year was just kind of, we had a few guys that we thought should have won it, and they're not here anymore, and because they're out for the season. We don't want to give it to Mahomes because that's just too easy. So we'll give it to Lamar because, oh wow, Lamar exciting, and his team was good.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of throws that I saw from Lamar on Thursday night where I'm just going like, we can't classify Lamar Jackson as a top quarterback if he continues to throw the ball like this. And we saw our Zay Flowers at the second last throw of the game just completely be missed while he was in the wide. And I saw a tweet that said, never compare Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson ever again with this, because again, these top
Yeah.
level quarterbacks hit Zay Flowers on that play. If Mahomes is making that pass, it's a touchdown. Joe Burrow's making that pass, it's a touchdown. Josh Allen, Zach Purdy, or Brock Purdy, And you can
Yep.
just go down the list of guys that are going to make that. Dak Prescott. Again, just let's pull up our, quarterbacks and we can go, they're making this. Lamar, he's consistently missing it. Now, he made a
Well,
brilliant
and
play to throw to Isaiah Likely, but his toe was out.
yep.
But
Yeah.
that
Well,
play
and
should
did
have
you
never
see the
happened.
interview after the game where he even said he wasn't throwing it to Zay Flowers. He was trying to go to Rashad Bateman, who he thought was going to sit down on his route right in that gap. But like you look at that and you go, well, Zay Flowers was 2 yards
Open.
away from your throw, and Rashad Bateman was like 7 yards away. So you're saying that you missed by 7 yards instead of two?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make you look better, man. That makes you look worse.
Like Zay Flowers, a 2 yard miss. People can live with that and then go, okay, you know what?
Yep.
He was stepping up in the pocket. It's a tricky throw, but it's a throw that he should be making. But if you're looking at Rashad Bateman and that's 7 yards and you miss by that much, it's like,
Yeah.
just lie and say I was looking for Zay Flowers and I just missed it.
Right.
Like,
Right. All slipped a little bit.
yeah,
Like I agree. Like that next throw to Isaiah likely was nice. It was a little high, which is likely why
he was out
he was
by a
out of
ton.
bounds, and it was very close. Like
Oh,
I've enjoyed watching all the Raven fan reactions to it, where they're all super excited, going, "Yeah, we're gonna go for two." Which, be real, Harbaugh likes to go for two and lose. So I don't think that would have worked for them anyway. They likely still would have lost the game. Um,
yeah, I don't love that move of going for two. We,
He does that so often though. That is like one of his staples where it's last play of the game, and if he can go for two to win it, he will do it almost every single time. And I think it I don't know the exact stats. I would have to look it up, but it can't be much better than 50% success rate at this point for him, which really you're flipping a coin on whether or not you're going to win the game, where you could just kick the field goal, go to overtime, and I guess still you have the coin flip on it whether or not you're gonna
And yeah, you're
win
going up
because
against Mahomes and the Chiefs as well in that
exactly.
situation. Like I get it. It's one of those things. However, I just look at it. I go, you're giving yourself an opportunity to still
Yeah,
win the game because again, it is a coin flip. No matter what, at the end of the day, the coin could go your way just as well as the coin could go the other team's way. And if you get it, and we saw what the offense was doing on that last drive. If you can get the offense to move like that, and even if you just go down and get a field goal off of that occasion, you're still forcing the Chiefs to go out there. And yeah, the Chiefs offense was moving the ball fairly well against your defense, but you still have a lot of premier talent on that defensive side of the ball. And I just look at it and go, just kick the field goal. Why are we removing points? And this is one of the things that we argued about with Brandon Staley, and now we're arguing with Dan Campbell. It's just, guys, kick the ball, take the points.
exactly. Take the guaranteed points that are there. Like that would be the smarter move. But yeah, it was a good game overall. And I mean, we talked about Isaiah Likely a little bit. That second year tight end, he came in to fill in for Mark Andrews last year after that horrible injury he had. And it looks like he's making a case to take away that number one tight end spot on this Ravens offense, because he had some really impressive plays, some nice moves after the catch. On that first touchdown he had. I know there's a lot of hype and a lot of people saying, "Oh, everybody's going to rush to the waiver wire for their fantasy teams and try to scoop him up." It's only 1 week, so I think we will see Mark Andrews resume his role as the bell cow when it comes to third and medium, third and short plays. So I don't know if Isaiah likely is going to have as many explosive plays as the season goes on, but this is good for the Ravens because
Having two
their
really good
wide
tight
receiver
ends.
room is not great. They've got Zay Flowers, another second year guy, and after that, it kind of drops off for this wide receiver room for the Ravens. So having a guy like Isaiah Likely is going to be very good for them if they can continue to scheme him open the way they were and utilize his talents.
Yeah, I look at Isaiah Likely and I go, Mark Andrews is still trying to come back from that injury. And, yeah, he's fully healthy, but he still needs to kind of get into that football shape. And the
Yeah,
only way to really do that is through is like time on task on the field playing. I think he's probably going to be a little bit slow to start this year. And again, that was one of the reasons why in our fantasy draft I wasn't looking towards Mark Andrews, because I knew the early stages of this season were going to be fairly light for him. Isaiah Likely is probably going to have a killer first month of the season, and after that, once Mark Andrews starts to settle back in, he kind of getting back to control. We're probably going to see that dip. And you and I were talking about this earlier this week, of the joke of everyone's going to do it. The fact you and I, we're not even going to touch him. We're not even going to think to do it.
No, and I mean he's a guy that I had on my watch list as soon as our draft was over. Anyway, because I like to do our draft and then I go through and see who didn't get picked up, and I'll throw guys that I think could have big seasons onto my watch list just in case one of my guys gets hurt or in case somebody does start going off on a consistent basis.
Yep.
So while he was on my watch list, 1 week isn't enough for me to abandon the tight end I already have without seeing what he can do. I think we'll see a lot of casuals around the fantasy football leagues where they are, they don't necessarily know, so they'll drop maybe their last pick that they had and pick up Isaiah Likely for their bench, which, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad move. It's a good move to make, good to have that blanket there, but guys like us, we're looking at it going, this could just be an early season surge where once Mark Andrews settles back in, as you said, we will see him start to take away some of those touches from Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me almost a little bit of what we saw with Puka Nakua last year, of where we looked at it and were like, oh, this kid just had a phenomenal first game, but then you and I were talking about going like, it's probably too soon to consider going after him. And then week 2, he puts up the insane numbers, and then every single person in our fantasy league put in a bid for him. It felt like, and it was one of those things where it's like, okay, like, who knows, if Isaiah Likely has another game like he did last week, it could be a possibility. And just looking at some of the guys that we have, again, I have Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers, so it could be a situation of, if Brock Bowers kind of has a really slow week these first 2 weeks and Isaiah Likely, yeah, I might put in a claim. But again, there's so much more that has to be done. But yeah, this Ravens Chiefs game, this was kind of exactly what we wanted out of game number 1 of two evenly matched teams. Going into the game, however, from last night, this was a game of just sloppy football, I felt.
It was, we both anticipated it being a little lower scoring than it was, so I will give props there. Like, we saw a lot of good football play. But we saw sort of the real issue here was, you know, the the type of grass and the type of field that they make for soccer, it does not translate well to football. That was the ultimate issue.
Yeah.
People were like, "Why is the field so sloppy? What's going on? Why are these guys falling?" Like, the way the pitch for soccer, it's meant for speed and agility, which when you talk about football, you have some guys that are fast and agile, but it's not built to handle the forceful, aggressive pushing and slamming that you get in football. So that I think is ultimately why there were so many issues, because people were like, well, what's the different grass? And it's actually the same grass that they have at Lambeau Field, as far as I understand. And so it wasn't the grass, it was the way that the sod is laid and the way that it is maintained that was causing the issues, really.
Yeah, and I know a lot of, like, when the World Cup comes to North America or America, a bunch of their stadiums that are being played in that are football stadiums, like, they're getting traditional grass, and people are asking like, "Oh, how come every team can't simply have this?" And I go, "It should be." I don't love turf. But there's differences between, like what you're saying, the way that the sod is laid down, and just because grass is a little bit different than the way, again, soccer, like what you're saying, more agility, more for speed. Football, there's a lot of power. Again, you just look at the trenches. Those guys tear up the grass a ton, and
Yeah.
if you don't have it really set properly, it makes it really sloppy. And again, in Brazil right now, it's winter. They are coming out, like, they're just leaving winter, but they're still in winter because they're southern hemisphere of the earth. And so again, a little bit trickier situations maybe than some of these players were realizing, but man oh man, Saquon Barkley. What a
Yep.
game.
Oh yeah, Saquon went off. I know. Again, going back to our fantasy draft, I was just hoping and praying he was going to drop to the third round so I could scoop
As
him
was
up
I.
because right, and I was anticipating big things. Luckily, I had the pick before you in the third round, so I would have grabbed him before you. But he went, I think it was very early second round. He was the first or second pick off the board in the second round, and I was like, damn it, I knew that was going to happen, and I expected to see big things from him. I didn't really expect him to have a 3 touchdown game his first time out, but holy crap, he was going off. And once they started to get a feel for the field and how to utilize it, we started to see both of the running backs really break off some really big, fast runs because that's what they started to realize. They were like, hey, we don't want to be making a lot of cuts. We want to just go north south. And once guys started realizing that, we saw some big plays break off in that game. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley went ninth in our 8-man league, so he was the first pick in the second round, so he had himself a day. But yeah, the running backs definitely, you could tell as the game went on, both sides were kind of realizing that the old linemen are having some issues having their feet planted, and the quarterbacks were definitely having issues staying upright with that, and it was just easier to hand the ball off and go just rush this up the middle and have
Yeah.
your really good game. But man, it was a sloppy game in terms of like the field conditions, but also the penalties. Like both teams just immensely struggled with all the penalties that they were taking. And it's not like a situation of where we were looking at the Ravens versus the Chiefs with their penalties being taken. Like these were just all very, very conducive. Like, yep, no, that's a penalty, guys. Like you can't do that.
Yep.
And you're just watching it. And but both teams, I think, watching that game, you can clearly see a lot of issues with both sides. Like the
Yeah, I
Packers,
will, play a bit of devil's advocate. Both teams were tired
mhm,
because they did not fly down like a week in advance or
they
anything
got there
like
like
that.
Wednesday.
Right, they went there 2 days early, and it is almost a 10-hour flight down. And so I think that probably did play a part. It's a little more fatigue. You're playing in an unfamiliar environment. As we talked about last week, it's a game where they flew in and then basically hung out in the hotel room until game time. And so it's tough to really get a solid read on how good these teams could be this year. But I saw some good things from both sides.
Oh, don't
The
get me wrong.
Eagles,
I
I
saw
think they
good
have
things from both sides. I just thought there
yeah.
was more issues that popped up for both sides than were maybe
Yeah, I
anticipated.
just wonder if some of those issues were related to the travel and the field conditions. So I like to take some of those with a grain of salt for sure.
Totally. Totally. But yeah, going back to what you're saying, like both sides did have some really good stuff. Jordan Love looked fairly cool, calm, and collected. And, the Packers defense looked okay, I thought, but then again, it could just be a situation of the offense that they were going up. Jair Alexander, I did not think looked particularly great. Yeah, sure, he had the one interception, but other than that, AJ Brown just basically looked at him and said, "Sit down, kid." Like you're like, yeah, like I feel like Jair Alexander is more bark than he is bite, and we
Yeah, and
saw that.
honestly, that one interception, I put that more on Jalen Hurts than on Jair Alexander. That was
Yeah,
that was a poor decision, a poor throw he should not have made. Even if it wasn't Jair, he was throwing it into double coverage, and so that was a bad decision by the quarterback that resulted in that interception. Really.
and we saw a handful of those from Jalen Hurts and Jordan Love. Like Jordan Love, he only got intercepted the once, but there was a few there were a few passes where I looked at him and went, "Man, that was dangerously close to going the other way." And he almost had a pick six. And so both
Yep.
quarterbacks were really struggling to see the field, I thought. And again, it might just be a situation of where they're tired. We might not see Jordan Love, however, for the next month, if potentially
Yeah, no,
longer.
we may have seen our first significant injury as well at the end of that game. I haven't seen the report on what for sure it is. I imagine they're going to fly him back and get him an MRI and everything. But There's been talks that it was a dislocation and possible tear in one of the tendons. So it could be a month at least. It could be longer if it was severe enough. Like this could be a season altering situation for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, from the two things that I've heard, it could be a MCL sprain, but it could also be a high ankle sprain, which both are not things that you really want to have your starting quarterback be dealing with. It's but again, it could also potentially be something of where it's longer, where we have an MCL tear and he's just out
Yeah.
for the season. And yeah, as a Chicago Bears fan that hates the Green Bay Packers, there was a part of me that was like, good. But as someone
Yeah.
who loves football and wants to see the best of the best go up against the best of the best, I kind of look at it and go, man, it's really unfortunate that that happens. We don't like injuries here, even if it is
No.
a guy. But yeah, as Bears fans, there
Well,
was a part of me that was like, okay, but again, I
yep.
would rather the Bears beat the Packers with Jordan Love out there as opposed to not. But
100%. And I mean, even someone such as yourself who's had a surgically repaired knee, like if this is a significant knee injury, you know pretty well what he's about to go through. So it's tough to see, 2 games into the season and one of the newly minted highest paid quarterbacks goes down. It's unfortunate to see.
yeah, um, still happy to see the Packers lose and get into a lot of good football, but those were the two official games, our primetime games to start this out. And again, Saturday, day for college football. We're not going to see Saturday football until closer to December. But yeah, our first game that we get to talk about is the Steelers taking on the Falcons. And right now, the Atlanta Falcons are favored by -3.5 points. So since this is your squad, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, this is a big game for Arthur Smith, returning to Atlanta after being there for the last, I think, 3 seasons as the head coach. Uh, it's going to be an interesting game for Pittsburgh. At this point, after naming Russell Wilson the starting quarterback a week and a half ago, they now don't know if he's actually going to be the starting quarterback. He's having some calf soreness and tightness, so we don't know if it's going to be Russ out there. We don't know if it's going to be Justin Fields. It sounds like it's going to end up being a game time decision. And so I recommend anybody who's looking to bet on this game or has either of those quarterbacks in their fantasy teams, just I would put all on the bench, put it all on the side. Don't even touch this game because it's going to be very up in the air. We also don't know how good Kirk Cousins is going to look after having his Achilles tear last season. He could be up for a rough day as well. This Pittsburgh Steelers defense is nothing to be slept on. They are going to be very good this year. I think ultimately that's what's going to be the story of this game is can the Steelers defense win a game for them early in the season?
Yeah, so for yourself, predictions on both the money line and
Um,
the spread.
it's week one. I have to go with the fanboy pick here. I am taking the Steelers to win this one. I don't want to go against them in week one. Even last year against the 49ers, I think I took them knowing that it wasn't going to go well. I gotta go with my guys on week one at the very least. So I think they're gonna find a way. The defense, especially, I expect TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith to be getting after Kirk Cousins early and often, make him uncomfortable on that surgically repaired ankle, and see if we can get him to make some mistakes, throw some interceptions, maybe to Minka Fitzpatrick or Joey Porter Jr. Get them uncomfortable, see if we can get an early lead, and then just clamp down that defense.
Yeah, so Sterling taking Steelers on money line, and again, since the Falcons are the favorites in this game, also taking the Steelers in the spread. This is a game that I think is going to be a little bit of a tough watch, I think, unfortunately, just because, again, if Russell Wilson does end up playing in this game, my question is how good is he going to look on that, iffy calf? If Fields jumps in, how is he just simply going to look with this offense out there? Again, for me, I look at the way these two teams are built. The Falcons, they have an okay defense and a above average offense, in my opinion. The Steelers have an elite defense and a I hate to say it, but a bottom five offense.
Yeah, below average for sure.
I think bottom five is probably
Yeah.
being fairly generous, but it is one of those things where, with just kind of those middling parts for Atlanta, are they going to be able to do enough on the offensive side of the ball to just kind of really push the Steelers offense, or pardon me, defense? And then, you know, the Steelers offense, can they do anything is kind of my question. And again, last week I know I had my little rant about the Steelers and how I'm extremely worried with what I saw. So all of these being said, like I love this Steelers defense. I have the Steelers defense as my fantasy defense. I have a lot of faith in what they're going to be able to do. However, with that being said, I just don't think I can actually pick the Steelers in this game until their offense actually shows me something, because that Steelers
Yeah.
defense, it's going to keep it very low scoring. I think if the Steelers defense can get 20 points, or give up 20 points or less, that is going to be the only way that they can actually have a hope to win this game, because frankly, I just don't know if the Steelers offense is going to be able to put up more than 14 at this. And even that to me is going like, damn, whoever their field goal kicker is going to be getting in a lot of points. And so yeah, for me in that regard, I am choosing the Falcons for this game, but I am taking the Steelers on the point spread. I think this is going to be a close game. I think it's probably going to be a fairly ugly game. I don't know how Kirk Cousins is going to fare in terms of that repaired ankle, especially going up against that Steelers defense. But yeah, those are kind of my reasons for that.
Yeah, understandable completely. Like I said, a lot of my reasoning for my pick is the fanboy side of it. You know, I'm hopeful that, since we didn't see a whole lot of the running game in the preseason, that's going to be the focal point. We're going to see that old school, Steelers Bears style of gameplay where we're going to run the ball down your throat, we're going to chew the clock up, and then our defense is going to punch you in the mouth.
Moving over to the second game of the week, and this is the Buffalo Bills taking on the Arizona Cardinals, and the Buffalo Bills are favored by 6.5 points in this one. A lot of talk this offseason was about what the Buffalo Bills were going to be able to do, because they had to move on from a lot of people. They had to kind of reset everything, and their offense looks severely different than what it did a year ago, where you're kind of going like, oh, who's the number one receiver for this Buffalo Bills team? And then on the opposite side, you look at the Cardinals and you go, okay, this is a team that we kind of jokingly said a lot last year was they were one of the best bad teams that we got to watch. They had a lot of really, really good draft picks this year. They had the most draft capital, and they used it and put it to good use. Drafting Marvin Harrison Jr., fourth overall, that is a massive target for Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray coming back fully healthy and with a full offseason of being healthy, that's also huge. And this is going to be one of those games where I think it's going to be really interesting to watch. I think having Josh Allen, however, on that one side, and the offensive coordinator, I'm forgetting his name, but they have a lot of confidence in him. This is just going to be one of those games where I think the Bills are going to control it, and I think the Bills are going to win it. But I think that that -6.5 is just going to be a little too much to cover for them. And I think with this Arizona team, they're going to be playing with a lot more juice, a lot more swagger. And Marvin Harrison Jr., I think it might be a little bit much for the secondary to handle. So I think the Bills are going to ultimately walk away with the win, but I'm choosing the Cardinals to cover the spread.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be a close game for sure. Hopefully Kyler Murray hasn't been spending too much time playing the new Call of Duty that just came out, and distract him too much from the playbook. But I do expect this Cardinals team to make some large steps this season towards improvement. As you said, they had a lot of draft capital. They made a lot of good picks. Their offense has improved dramatically. Their defense has improved a little bit.
Still a long way to go for their defense.
Yeah, whereas the Bills, it's a lot of question marks. They gutted this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball in the secondary. So, like you said, I think Marvin Harrison could have a big game for his first game out there with Kyler Murray. I do think that Cardinals offense are going to be able to keep pace with the Bills, but I think that veteran ability of Josh Allen, having James Cook there in the backfield, I think they're going to be able to hold them off at the end and sort of, like you said, they'll control the game, they'll control the pace, but the Cardinals will be keeping up. I think they'll keep step by step. I do also have the Bills winning this game, but the Cardinals will cover the spread.
Coming up next is my Chicago Bears at home taking on the Tennessee Titans, and the Bears are favored in this game by -3.5 points. And it's not going to be much of a surprise. I'm taking the Bears in this game. I think the Titans are a better team than a lot of people are going to give them credit for. You know, they do have a better receiving core than I think people are giving them credit for, and their defense got dramatically better this offseason. But everything that I see and you just talk about in this game of going like, oh, their secondary for the Titans got a lot better this year. Okay, sure, you got L'Jarius Sneed and you brought in another free agent guy. I can't remember the name of the guy at the moment, but they're going to have to go up against DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Romo Dunze, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. And I just look at that and I go, that secondary is much improved, but you have a guy who's going to the Hall of Fame, one of the best receivers in football, and a top 10 draft pick at wide receiver that you're going to have to cover. That's going to be really tricky. Then I look at, for instance, their wide receivers. They're going up against the best secondary in football. Jalen Johnson, if DeAndre Hopkins does play and he's trying to play through a I can't remember if it's an MCL tear in his knee, but he has a torn muscle in his knee, and it's going like
Yep.
if DeAndre Hopkins is out there, he's gonna have to go up against Jalen Johnson. And then you look at Calvin Ridley. Okay, you're gonna have to go up against Tyreek Stevenson, who proved in the back half of last year that he would be the number one corner for I would probably say 20 teams in the NFL. That like him being the number one corner. And so then you just look at Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker, all these things. I just think the Bears are just the better team here. I think the offensive line is going to be able to hold up for the most part against the Titans' defensive line. And I think Caleb Williams is just going to go out there confident, ready to show the NFL what he's truly about, go through an entire game of processing from the first quarter to the second quarter, the third, the fourth. And ultimately, I think this is going to be a game for the Bears of where they control it. And not only do they win, but they cover the spread.
Yeah, yeah. This is going to be a fun game to watch because, as you said, the Titans have gotten better. This is a sort of a tale of two teams that were on a sort of similar trajectory, except the Bears at this point appear to have completed their rebuild. They've got a head coach who's staying from last year to this year. Everything's sort of staying par. You've got your franchise quarterback now. And I think the Bears are going to likely keep this game simple, not try to get too fancy with it, and just play a very simple, consistent game. Whereas the Titans, they're sort of still in that rebuild phase. They've got maybe the quarterback of their future. They've got a new coaching staff. So there's going to be some pains there for the Titans at the start of this year. And you've got the best wide receiving core arguably in the league for the Bears, and then the best secondary as well. It's going to be tough going up against this Bears team in week one. I think the Bears will easily start to run away with this game, and they'll just sit down on that lead with that defense. And we might see a bit of a boring fourth quarter where maybe they're not letting Caleb throw it as much. Just be like, here, just hand it off to Swift. We're up by 20. Don't even worry about it. So yeah, I've got the Bears winning this game as well and covering the spread.
Next game that we have up here is the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the New England Patriots, where the Cincinnati Bengals are currently -7.5 points favorites in this one.
Yeah, we still don't know if Jamar Chase is for sure playing in this game. I'm pretty sure he will. He has been practicing with the team this week. I know he still wants that new contract, so that's likely going to cause some division in the locker room, on the field. So we might see a little bit of struggles from the Cincinnati team up front. But luckily, they've got arguably the worst team in the league to go up against in week 1 here in the New England Patriots. So even with that, I think the Bengals will find their stride. Joe Burrow he's got a nice easing back into it after his injury last year. He'll be able to find guys like T. Higgins, Jamar Chase if he's out there. Um, I'm a little more suspect with their rushing game this year because they lost Joe Mixon, so that's going to hurt. I believe Zach Moss is now their
Zach Moss
running
and
back.
Chase Brown. Chase Brown is kind of
Yeah,
being talked about as the favorite.
yeah. But isn't Chase Brown also dealing with an injury right now? He's on board,
No,
I do
it's
believe.
T Higgins that I think you're thinking
It's T.
about.
Higgins that is? Okay,
Yeah.
fair. But I think the Bengals, their offense is going to be that Bengals offense. They're going to be good. They're going to be dominant. They're going to be able to put up points. That defense is still not great. It's looking a little Swiss cheese like. But again, this is a terrible Patriots team. So luckily for Jacoby Brissett, he might not get too banged up in this first game because that Bengals D isn't great. I do think the Bengals are going to run away with this game and win it easily. And I know that 7.5 spread is pretty hefty, but I think they're going to cover it.
Yeah. Looking into this game, I think Jamar Chase is gonna play. I think the whole him holding out, he to me, he's been just one of those guys where he wants to get his money and he's already kind of been there for a lot of years and he knows the system. So again, training camp is not necessarily something that was really needed for Jamar Chase. I think going back into the regular season, he doesn't want to get fined for missing games and he has no real reason to miss games. It's not like he's not playing with a quarterback situation of where that's kind of up in the air and some things quite like that. But T. Higgins being questionable for this game is not something that I love, but Jermaine Burton, their third round pick, looked phenomenal all offseason. So if T. Higgins is out, you still have a guy that I think Cincinnati is really, really loving in Jermaine Burton. But with this game, the Patriots, yeah, sure, the Bengals don't necessarily have the best defense in the NFL, but you look at the Patriots offense and you just go, okay, Jacoby Brissett is there. Okay, everyone name, players on that offensive side of the ball, please. Unless if you're not a New England fan, I would love to hear who the majority of people know on that offense.
I
And
mean,
you just kind of
the
go to
only ones
that.
I know that they've got Kevin Bourne to throw the ball to, and they've got Antonio Gibson running the ball, and that's about it.
Yeah, but
Which don't
it's
get me wrong, I like Antonio Gibson. I thought he was a good running back coming out of college. I think that the Commanders mishandled him, and so he could have a bit of an emergence this year, being that he is likely to be the bell cow for that Patriots offense, and they're going to likely lean very heavily on him to run that ball often.
yeah. I just continue to look at this offense for the Patriots and I go, it's almost like that scene from Fearless Bueller's Day Off where you're like Bueller, and just no one's doing anything. And then you also look at that defense and go, it's Christian Gonzalez and who else? And Christian Gonzalez missed most of his rookie year last year. So I just continue to go, can Christian Gonzalez shut down Jamar Chase? Unlikely. And so yeah, I'm choosing the Bengals, and again that 7.5 point spread is large, especially for week number 1. But I just feel like the Bengals, they're going to be very comfortable in this game, and I don't think the Patriots are going to be much of a stretch. Joe Burrow, like I've said, I think he's going to have a monster year this year. I think this is his MVP level year, and this is just going to be the nice ease. This is basically going to be like LSU going up against an FCS or an FBS school where it's like, okay, we're just going to casually put up 70 points. I don't think it's going to be that much, but this is not going to be a pretty game for the Patriots. Next game up that we have on the list is a divisional game where we have the Texans taking on the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, this is going to be a good game. You know, we get to see CJ Stroud again, offensive rookie of the year last year. Um, I know a lot of people are hyped on Anthony Richardson, but I'm still quite worried about how injury prone he was last year. He played in, I think, 4 games and didn't finish a single one of them. And so I'm worried for the Colts. You know, like they've got a decent team. You know, they've got a good running game. You know, Jonathan Taylor is there from week 1 this year. No holdout like he had last year. And we saw a couple years ago he was one of the best backs in the league. So I expect to see that again from him. You still got Michael Pittman Jr., a formidable wide receiver, but I don't think it's going to be enough to hold up to this Texans team where you've got guys like Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, Stephon Diggs joining the team now. And again, CJ Stroud, who was probably one of the best rookie quarterbacks we've seen in years in his first year, and I expect to see that just continue this season. I think the Texans are going to make pretty quick, easy work of this Colts team.
Yeah, I think the Colts are maybe a little bit better than you are particularly giving them credit for, because they were almost a playoff team last year. They
Yep.
were a solid team. And I think they put in a lot of really good work last year. However, with that being said, what you said about Anthony Richardson, I have a lot of concerns with him. The Colts, when they drafted him, he had like okay, I should state it this way. Since leaving high school, Anthony Richardson has started 17 games since leaving high school up to today. That is not a
Yeah.
lot of football time. Now, he is electrifying, he is mobile, he throws the ball very nicely, but it's one of those things I'm just like, listen, I can't trust Anthony Richardson. I said he needed to protect himself last year. He didn't do it. This Texans team, they are a fiery, explosive defense. They are a team that is going to go out there and hunt. You don't think that the reigning defensive rookie of the year is going to be looking at him going like, "Okay, buddy, let's do it." Another stat that I saw today, CJ Stroud against all of his divisional opponents through no he had no turnovers the entire time in the 6 games that he played against division opponents. I just think this Texans team is going to come out really, really strong. They're going to have a point to prove of going, listen, we kind of, I know we're the team that is the team this year, but we're going to show it. And going up against the Colts, I think not only are they going to win, but I have them covering the spread at that 3 points as well.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like I'm not underestimating the Colts. They have a good team. It's just that
It's the
question
Texans
mark
are
and
just so good.
inconsistency at quarterback. You know, we saw it last year, like you said, after Anthony Richardson officially went down for the rest of the year, then
Gardner Minshew
Gardner
came in and
Minshew
played.
came in, and he was a good quarterback throughout. You know, and you look at their depth chart this year, and if the same thing happens, you've got Joe Flacco coming in and filling that role where we saw he was very good for the Browns last year once he came off his couch to start playing again.
Hmm.
And so once we know for sure that Anthony Richardson is going to stay healthy, then yes, this Colts team will be good. Or once he's out and Joe Flacco is in there, then yes, this Colts team will be good. But as long as that question mark is there,
It's
it
hard to make a
worries me.
judgment on him.
You know, like if we have the same sort of thing last year where it's like, oh, Anthony Richardson, he's in there. It looks good for the first quarter, and he's down halfway through the second quarter, and Flacco's in.
Yeah.
And then you've got that dynamic change in style of quarterback because it was the same thing. Gardner Minshew is much more of that pocket style passer. He's not as mobile. He's not as keen to get outside the pocket and run the ball as someone like Anthony Richardson. And Joe Flacco at 36 years old definitely is not going to want to go outside that pocket and run. And so it changes the dynamic of this team. And that's where my concern is. Let me see Anthony Richardson finish a game or two in a row, and then I'll start giving the Colts a little more props.
Yeah, for us, it's solely based off of the concern with Anthony Richardson and his health. And not only that, like I think even if he's in there, how is he going to play against some elite level defenses as well? Because I do think the Texans defense is very, very, very good. But now moving over to our next game of the week, where we have the Miami Dolphins taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Jacksonville Jaguars are not favored in this one. It's the Dolphins at -3.5 points. I love Miami's offense. I think it's
Yeah.
very well known that I'm a big fan of McDaniels. I'm big fan. I think he's probably a top. I wouldn't say top three, but he's top five offensive mind in the game. I think Tua, again, he's healthy, and when he's healthy, this Miami team, they're the healthiest they can be at the moment. And when they are
Yep.
healthy, they are a scary unit. Tyreek Hill, we know what he's like when he's perfectly healthy and his legs are going. 150-yard game, 2 TDs is something that could be a very easy thing to see. And there's just a lot of really good options here for this Miami squad to do. Again, they have the leader in touchdowns, Raheem Mostert, coming back. Devin Achan is also really good, and he's going to be likely having a bigger role in this game. I look at the Jags and I go, sure, Trevor Lawrence got paid, and they got Brian Thompson Jr. this year, who's looked pretty good throughout training camp and preseason. But there's just so much where I go, Miami is just, they just have this feeling of they're going to be almost like an unstoppable train. And I worried that the Jags defense is going to be able to stop it, because I can't remember who their main corners are, but they're going to be in for a long day for sure, with that being said. And then having this Jags team, I just look at it and go, Trevor Lawrence, we need to see him take this elite step this year. We talked about it all offseason. He needs to take that step. And I'm sure he's probably going to do okay against Miami this week, but is it going to be enough to actually win the game? And so for this one, I do have Miami winning the game, and I have them covering the 3.5 point spread.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it best. This year, Trevor Lawrence really has to show us why everybody talked about him being a generational quarterback. He needs to take that next step, and this week 1 matchup is the perfect time to start on that road. Like, if you can beat the Miami Dolphins in week 1, a battle of Florida teams, so neither team has to travel very far. It's going to be you're both familiar with the weather conditions. It's going to come down to pure talent. Who has more talent? Who can win this game the best? If Trevor Lawrence plays to his potential, he will be the better quarterback in this game. Unfortunately, the Dolphins have Tyreek Hill, as you said, and then don't forget they've got Jalen Waddle too. They have a great 1-2. Whereas, yeah, the Jags, they drafted Brian Thomas Jr., who looks really good, but they lost Calvin Ridley, which means Christian Kirk is now their number 1 option. And Christian Kirk, he did okay as a number 1, but he wasn't lights out. You still have Evan Ingram there, you still have Travis Etienne, and everybody's healthy. Much like with the Dolphins, everybody's healthy. And both of these teams, that's going to be the key through this whole season, is staying healthy, because we saw both of them last year. Well, we saw the Jags last year and the Dolphins the year before. As the injuries start to mount, the team falls off quite significantly. And so that will be a key thing. I don't know if there are enough offensive weapons for this Jaguars team to stand toe to toe with how good the Dolphins are as a week 1 team, with everybody healthy, everybody ready to go. And I think you're right. I expect to see Tyreek Hill go well over 100 yards, probably get 2 touchdowns. I expect Achan or Mostert, if not at least one, if not both, to be getting touchdowns as well. I think the Dolphins are going to run away with this game, but the Jags they'll keep pace early until Tyreek Hill has a couple of burnout plays that just deflate the Jags completely, which will result in the Dolphins both winning the game and covering the spread.
Now talking about our toilet bowl game of the week, bringing that back here, and this is the New Orleans Saints taking on the Carolina Panthers. There is pretty much nothing that appeals to me in this game. The Panthers are -4, or pardon me, the Saints are -4 favorites in this game, and we have been kind of talking about the New Orleans Saints team this year being this is going to be a rough season for them. We think that team is going to be bad, and the fact that they're 4-point favorites over this Carolina Panthers team just really shows how bad the Panthers are. And again, this is just I'm so happy I'm not a fan of either of these teams because I will not be watching it. Again, Bears are playing at this time, Steelers are playing this time, so neither of us will be watching that particular game. But I feel bad for anyone who has to be a fan to watch this because it's just gonna be horrible to watch. And yeah, it's hard to come up with a lot of nice things to say about either side. Oh, you have Dave Canellis, he's the new head coach and play caller for the Panthers, but we saw Bryce Young play last year, and to be honest, their weapons aren't that much better. Deontay Johnson, he's what he is. Xavier Legette, I have come out and stated I don't think he was that good of a pick anyways. Even at the end of the first round, I've got a lot of concerns with that. So there's a lot of question marks with this Panthers team. And then you just go over to the Saints side and go, okay, well, they have Derek Carr. Yay. I think their head coach, I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head right now, but I think he's the candidate to be the first guy to get fired this year. This is just such a bad game to watch. I do have the Saints winning this game, but I actually have the Panthers covering that 4-point spread because I can't trust the Saints to do anything good. I don't like their defense. I don't love their offense. And for all of those reasons in hand, that's why I do have the Saints winning, but the Panthers are going to cover that because I don't think it's going to be enough or the Saints offense is going to do enough to win by more than 4 points.
That's fair. I think this game was sort of tied for me for the Toilet Bowl game with one of the other games we've yet to talk about coming up. And I do have a good thing to say about this game, and that is Alvin Kamara. He is in a contract year. We've seen what this guy can do. I think this is going to be his swan song with the New Orleans Saints, and I think he's going to go out there and he's going to be playing for himself to get himself a decent contract with another team next year. I think we're going to see Alvin Kamara reemerge as one of the top backs in the league this year. I think he's going to surprise people. I would not be shocked to see him go out and put up similar numbers to what we just saw Saquon Barkley do yesterday, have multiple touchdowns in this game against the Panthers defense, which is just horrible. They lost Brian Burns, the only bright spot they had on that defense. And so I think the Saints are probably going to tear this Panthers team up. The defense isn't that good, so we might, if Bryce Young can find a way to convince Deontay Johnson to catch balls and get the ball into Legette's hands, then maybe we could see something start to happen there. But it won't be enough. I do think the Saints are the better team. That's why they're favored. That's why the spread is what it is. I think the Saints win this game, and I think they cover that spread. I don't think the Panthers are good enough to keep it within 5 points.
Yeah. Do you think Alvin Kamara gets traded at trade deadline?
It's a possibility. It would be a smart move for the Saints if they can get something back for him. If Kamara has built up that trade value by then, and I think he's going to. We know they're not re-signing him. They can't afford him. I think feels like he's run his path with the Saints team. I would love to see him on one of these other teams that's sort of middling and lacking in their run game. I think he could be a boon to some of these other teams. Like imagine him on the Chargers.
Yeah. That
The
would
Chargers
be a
are
pretty
lacking a
solid
lot
move.
right now. Adding him to that Chargers team would be a fierce addition, or if he goes to somewhere like the Bengals, if Zach Moss doesn't pan out, getting Alvin Kamara on that Bengals team, that could be quite something to watch. So I think he is definitely at the top of my list of guys to watch getting moved at that trade deadline. But whether he does or not, I do think he is going to have a big season this year.
Fair. Now moving over to the next game that I think we would argue is probably either the toilet bowl game of the week or the second toilet bowl game of the week, and that is the Minnesota Vikings taking on the New York Football Giants. And the Minnesota Vikings are favored in this one by -1.5. So it's basically saying you get 2 points and you win, you cover the spread, Minnesota. Good job. But yeah, I'm gonna let you kick this one off.
Yeah, this is the exact game I was talking about. That's sort of my tie for the toilet bowl game. Yeah, there's more star power on these two teams, so at least there's something to watch. I'll give you that. But overall, I think these two teams are just as bad as those other two we talked about. Especially the Giants. They're not great. They've got subpar at best quarterback play. All they really have is Malik Neighbors. It's Malik Neighbors and Justin Jefferson. Who's going to be the flashiest out there? That's going to be this whole game, really. I am interested to see what Sam Darnold can do as a starter. Given the reins, he knows there's nobody behind him that's breathing down his neck this season at least. And so I am curious to see what he can do. Maybe he impresses. Maybe he shows us that, now he's reaching that 26-year-old range where we start to see quarterbacks as they develop hit their stride and come into their prime. This is something that I know we've seen Tom Brady talk about, where we see a lot of guys getting drafted now and thrust into the spotlight well before they're ready. And then they're cut by their teams before they fully develop into what they can become. And this could be that situation for Sam Darnold with a great receiving option in Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. He could come out there and be this lights out guy. And all of a sudden we go, oh, okay, it is a 4-team race in the NFC North. The Vikings actually might stand a chance to be competitive with these other teams. But outside of that, if Sam Darnold does not impress, this is going to be a garbage game to watch. I do think the Vikings will win this, and I do think they will cover that spread because I don't think the Giants have the ability to put up enough points to keep up.
Yeah, this is a game of two tapes of where you have a decent looking offense in the Minnesota Vikings. You just have one of the situations of, can Sam Darnold get the ball to his playmakers at a successful rate? Because you have Justin Jefferson, who I think both of us would agree is the best wide receiver in football. Jordan Addison is a very, very good number two, and you also have Aaron Jones, who is healthy, going to be the running back for this Minnesota Vikings team. And then taking a look at the other side where you go, okay, the Giants actually have a pretty decent looking defense. They have a scary defensive line, which is going to be interesting to watch. But then you go over to the opposite side of where you have what you could arguably say is the worst offense in football, where you have Daniel Jones, who is terrible at playing quarterback. His only option is Malik Neighbors, which if you're the Minnesota Vikings and you're Brian Flores, all you need to do is stop Malik Neighbors. That's all you need to do. But the problem is that your secondary sucks. So these are two things you just kind of look at from both sides and go, man, these are just. This is going to be a tough game to watch for sure. But I think the Vikings are going to come out on top. I think their star power on offense is going to be a little bit more. I think Sam Darnold is just a little bit more of a consistent quarterback who's going to be able to play the game a little bit better. I trust their offensive coaching staff a little bit more than I do the Vikings or than I do the Giants. And ultimately, I think this is going to come down to Daniel Jones throwing away the game. I like I said, I don't trust Daniel Jones. I don't think he's a good quarterback. I genuinely think it's going to be a situation of where Daniel Jones just throws away the game and the Vikings walk away with it. And I think the Vikings, they cover the spread in this one.
Yeah, yeah, and you said that Saints head coach is on that hot seat. I think Brian Daboll, unfortunately, is also on the hot seat here, unfairly. I think
Yes.
Daniel Jones is going to get him fired this year. unfortunately, is what we're going to see, because
Daniel Jones is going to get a lot
it's
of
hard
people
to fire
fired.
a quarterback that you've got 3 years left on their contract, whereas a head coach, that's usually the first one to fall when something like this starts happening. And I think Daniel Jones is going to end up getting Brian Daboll fired.
I think Daniel Jones is going to get a lot of people fired. Moving over to the next game of the week, we have the Raiders taking on the new look Chargers.
Yeah, another divisional matchup. We got the AFC West going on here. This is an interesting game to pick because both of these teams are kind of new look, especially around the offense. Yes, the Chargers still have Herbert, and that's sort of where that ends. After that, it's a whole lot of new faces along with the new head coach. And then same sort of thing for the Raiders on offense. You know, we've got a new quarterback in Gardner Minshew. You've got a new running back. Josh Jacobs is gone. Devontae Adams is sort of the only mainstay there. But their tight end group is really strong in Vegas right now, and the defense especially is really scary. I think this is going to be a big battle of defense because you've got Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins on one side, along with a handful of other great players, and then you've got Joey.
Uh-oh, I think I lost him. Uh-oh, the internet definitely died on you, Sterling, my friend.
and I think.
Yeah, definitely lost you a little bit on that one. So, but pretty much the last thing that I heard was Joey Bosa is gonna be fairly good. And pretty much kind of what you were saying is defensive side of the ball is gonna be a very, very big thing for both of these two teams. And yeah, I have to agree with you. I think the Raiders offense is one where I have a lot of concerns with because of who their play caller is. Luke Getsy, I don't have a lot of
Yep.
faith in. I've seen him for 2 years. I know his opening drive is going to look spectacular against this Chargers defense. But other than that, it's going to be it's going to be bad. And then you look at the Chargers and you go, okay, you have Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, and you like those two options. But other than that, it's going like, okay, well, who's going to be catching the passes from Justin Herbert? Lad McConkey looks good, but if the Raiders can just settle things down on defense and go, we're not going to allow your rookies to beat us. And I think the Raiders are ultimately going to walk away with this game because I think they have the best defensive player in football right now with Max Crosby. You got a new playmate in Christian Wilkins. You have year two with Tyree Wilson coming off the other side of the edge. And I just think Justin Herbert, the biggest reason why I'm choosing this Raiders team to win is because he just missed so much time in the preseason dealing with that injury, and he just hasn't had that time to connect with his wide receivers. It's just going to be really, really tough for him. And so for me, that's why I have the Raiders covering the spread and winning the game in this particular occasion.
Yeah, because the Chargers are favored at this point, I believe. The
Yeah, they are.
Chargers are kind of
-3.
a wild card team for me right now. Like you look at them and they've got a lot of pieces that could turn out to be really good. It's just going to be finding that consistency. If there's any coach that can do it, it is Jim Harbaugh. I will give him that.
100%.
So this is a team that we could see after their bye week just go on a run and become undefeated after that bye week. That is very possible for this team. In the early stages, it's going to be a big struggle for this Chargers team, though, unless they can hit those perfect connections right away, which is hard to do. And for that reason, that's why I'm also taking the Raiders to win this game and cover the spread.
Yeah. Taking a look here at the next game up on our list is the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Denver Broncos. And the Seattle Seahawks are -6-point favorites in this game. I look at this game and I don't have a lot of hope about what this Broncos team is going to do. But I also look at the offensive side of things for the Seahawks, and I have been on record to say that I'm more concerned about the Seahawks team than some other people. We all know my dislove for the defensive-minded head coach in the NFL. Mike McDonald coming over, can he get the Seattle Seahawks offense going at a pace that it was better? They have weapons. Is Geno Smith going to be the guy? Is their defense going to be able to do a bunch of stuff against a Sean Payton offense? I don't know. But what I do know is the Broncos and Sean Payton, they do have Bo Nix starting, and they feel very confident. Bo Nix is the most experienced college quarterback to be drafted into the first round ever. And so he knows the Sean Payton offense. He's seen a lot of defense come at him. Granted, when he played at Auburn and played at Oregon, is it NFL caliber guys that he's going up against every single week? No, but he is experienced. With that being said, I do think this Seahawks team, they're just a little bit better. They're a little bit more consistent here at the moment. I think the Seahawks are going to win, but I have the Broncos covering that 6-point spread because I think they're the bet makers are really putting in a lot of faith saying that the Seahawks are 6-point favorites in this game. I don't think the Broncos are good this year, but to me that is a little bit crazy for me to think about that at this current moment.
That's fair. I think I'm a little bit more high on the Seahawks this year. I've seen a lot of good things out of them the last few years. If Kenneth Walker can stay healthy, he is a force to be reckoned in the. Geno Smith has shown that he is capable of being that guy when he's got a consistent, decent play caller to feed him those plays. So, and you got to remember, he's still got DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant. Like a lot of this offense stayed together,
Mhm.
and so they're going to be comfortable and consistent. I'm not concerned about the offense. The defense has some holes for sure, but they've got some really good players out there as well. And Witherspoon, he will make life difficult for Bo Nix for sure.
Yes.
Um, this is Sean Payton as a head coach, though. He does some fantastic things. He couldn't get it done with Russell Wilson last year, but now he's got something that he can truly mold into the style that he likes. It might take a little bit of time, though. So I don't think that Bo Nix and the Broncos are going to be very good to start out, or even by the end of this season, honestly. I think there's going to be some struggles for this Broncos team, and the defense is not great to look at either.
No.
So I do think the Seahawks are going to embarrass the Broncos a little bit in this week 1 game. I think the Seahawks will run away with this, and they will cover that spread.
Next game up on our list is the Cowboys taking on the Cleveland Browns, with the Cleveland Browns favorited at -2.5 points.
That is crazy to me if the Browns are favored. Like, how do you favor the Browns in this game? That makes absolutely no sense to me. If CeeDee Lamb was sitting, yes, fine. Then I could see that. But he signed his contract. As far as I know, he's playing. Like, I haven't seen anything that said he's not. And so you've got Dak Prescott, you've got CeeDee Lamb, like you got Micah Parsons on the other side of the ball. If Deshaun Watson wants to be touched, Micah Parsons is going to do that for him for sure. This Cowboys team they're going to decimate the Browns. I know the Browns have a good defense. I will give them that. But this Cowboys team at the start of seasons, the last few years, is very good. And I expect to see the same thing starting this year. I think the Cowboys are going to win this game. They're at home as well. And are they not? Like, it's in Dallas and the Browns are favored. Like, who's making these odds?
It's actually in Cleveland.
It's in Cleveland? Okay,
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
then I can understand. The defense is very good, but I still think the Cowboys are going to win the game and therefore cover the spread.
Yeah, I was shocked to see that the Cowboys were -2.5 point, or pardon me, underdogs in this game, and I am granted higher on the Browns than you are in this. I think Kevin Stefanski, he is a top 5 offensive mind in football, and we saw what the offense was capable of doing last year, and that defense was so good, and they didn't really lose anyone last year. So I think the Cowboys defense is still going to be just as good as we saw last year. I am concerned with Deshaun Watson, just that time off of playing with the injury and everything else that surfaces around. So for me, that is the biggest concern in this one. However, when it comes to the Cowboys, I think their defense, I think it's a I don't think people are talking about the Cowboys defense in the negative way that they should be talking about this Cowboys defense. Micah Parsons is really their best player. But after that, you talk about Trayvon Diggs and the other guy that they had as a corner. I'm forgetting his name at the moment. Both of them do a really good job at intercepting the ball, but both of them also give up a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns. And it's not like the Browns don't have good receivers. They have Amari Cooper. They have Jerry Jeudy, who I think needs a change of scenery from Denver. And if Deshaun Watson can get back to a semi level of play or semi decent level of play, I think the Browns offense is going to give fits to this Cowboys defense. Now, you look at the offense side of the ball as well, and you go CeeDee Lamb, and then who else with Dak Prescott? So I think the Browns are going to be able to give and make this a good game. But with all that being said, I think the Cowboys are just the better unit here at the end of the day. I do think the Cowboys are going to be able to cover the spread, obviously, if I'm picking them to win the game. But I think this is going to be probably in that range of a 2-point game. I think the Browns are a lot better than maybe yourself is giving them credit for. Because again, Kevin Stefanski is a brilliant head coach. It's just for me the questions with Sean Watson.
Well, and that's what it is for me too. It's that Deshaun Watson question mark that brings me so low on the Browns. That is the issue. Like, yeah, they look great once Joe Flacco was in there, but it took them four other quarterbacks before they got to Joe Flacco, and they started looking good on offense. And that included Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
And so I don't have the faith here, and even their backfield, Jerome Ford looked good at times last year, but he's no Nick Chubb.
Oh, it's Nick Chubb's a top 3 back in the league in my opinion. And so yeah, they're definitely taking a big loss in that department. But yeah, we both have the Cowboys winning this game, and it's weird to think that the Browns are that -2.5 favorites. But yeah, it's interesting to say the least. But moving over to the next game coming up on our list is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Washington Commanders. In this game, we have the Bucks, who are I don't want to say they're hopeful. I think they're playoff hopeful, but they're a really weird team to kind of talk about in that NFC South, because this should be the Bucks division. They're better than the Saints, they're better than the Panthers, they're better than the Falcons in my opinion. So they should be able, in my opinion, I think they should be able to win this division. But with that also being said, they're not as good on offense. They're an old team. Their offense is up there. Mike Evans, I'm penciling him in for 1,000 yards because he always gets 1,000 yards. Why am I forgetting some of the other guys that they have on the offensive side of the ball? But they lost Dave Canales, who was a very, very smart offensive minded guy. I'm interested to see how he's gonna do, but it's going up against this Washington team. We talked about the Commanders being one of the worst teams in the league last year, and we still think they're going to be in that position now because they don't have an edge rush to speak of. Their secondary is horrific. Their linebacking core has basically a 2-foot in the grave Bobby Wagner at this point. So there's no real hope there. You look at their offensive side of the ball, they traded away Jahan Dotson, who was their number 2. So it's pretty much Terry McLaurin and nobody else in terms of actually catching the ball. They have an ancient Zach Ertz. Brian Johnson or Brian Robinson Jr. I like as a running back, but
Yeah.
he needs to show a lot more. Jaden Daniels has no offensive line in front of him to speak of. Sam Cosmi is the best guy, and he just got paid this week. But other than that, it is more openings than it is doors being closed. I think this Buccaneers defense is going to give this Commanders offense some fits, especially on the defensive line. As long as they can keep Jane Daniels relatively contained, the Buccaneers are walking away with a pretty easy victory, in my opinion. They are favored -3.5, and I have the Commanders not covering that. I have the Buccaneers covering that spread pretty easily. I think 3.5 is pretty solid right there, and the Bucks are going to cover.
Yeah, the 2 points you hit on that I think are the biggest keys here is the loss of Dave Canales for the Bucks definitely makes them a worse team this year. Not by much, but having that offensive-minded play caller, we saw how much that helped Baker Mayfield.
Yes.
The rest of the offense, however, they stayed together. Like you said, Mike Evans is still there. You got Baker Mayfield. You got Rashad White in the backfield. You still have Chris Godwin there. This
Chris
offense
Godwin,
will
that's
still
who I
be
was
able,
thinking of.
yeah, this offense will still be able to move the ball. And then the other point was the Swiss cheese offensive line in Washington. Jaden Daniels is going to spend this whole season running for his life. He just has to hope he can get the ball out, hand it off to Brian Robinson Jr., dump it off to Austin Eckler, dump it off to, as you said, the aging Zach Ertz. Hope to God that the O line can give him some opportunities to heave it downfield to Terry McLaurin every now and then, maybe. And then they just have to pray that after losing both Curtis Samuel and trading away Jahan Dotson, they have to pray Luke McCaffrey becomes a spitting image of his older brother. That they have to pray that Luke McCaffrey lives up to that McCaffrey name and becomes a superstar for them early and often. Outside of that, the Washington Commanders do not have a whole lot to look forward to this season. They need to spend next year's draft focusing on their offensive line and their defense as a whole, because
Yep.
the defense is, like you said, nothing
Terrible.
special. So yeah, the Bucks I think will be able to settle into this game comfortably. They will win this game and they will cover that spread. Jaden Daniels will likely have some nice flashy plays. We'll see that and go, oh, the Commanders could have something here. But I think we're 2 or 3 years away from seeing what they truly have.
Yeah, I think Vita Vea on that defensive line for the Buccaneers is looking at this going like, ooh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I don't think Vea's got enough speed to keep up with Jaden Daniels.
No, but he's
So
going to break through that line often.
yeah, he's going to break through that line and send him scrambling. And, maybe break up some of the runs for Brian Robinson. But ultimately, it's the guys like Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz. They're going to have to play like they did 5 years ago to give this team any hope at some wins this year.
Yeah. Now taking a look here at our next game of the week, and this is our Sunday night football game where we have the Lions taking on the Rams in Detroit, the rematch of the playoff game from last year where the Detroit Lions are -4.5 point favorites over the Rams in this one. This is a Lions team that is going to be extremely, extremely motivated to get back and go out there and beat the Rams yet again and just show that this is our year. I've already stated that I think the Lions are, if they're not going to be the NFC champions, they're going to be number 2 pretty easily, in my opinion. But this Rams team is going to come into Detroit and they're going to give the Lions everything they possibly have because Sean McVay is, in my opinion, the third best play caller in the NFL behind Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan. He has a running back room of Kyron Williams and Blake Corum who are going to get back to the way that Sean McVay really likes to have this offense. Because I think people forget Sean McVay is a power run first team because he comes from that Kyle Shanahan tree. He comes from that Shanahan coaching staff. And we all know that the Shanahan family loves to run the ball. And McVay has kind of made it a little bit more of his own style of things. But it but also having Cooper Kupp be fully healthy alongside with Puka Nakua, who's also going to be very, very good in year number 2. I just look at this and I go, man, this Rams team is not going to look at the Lions and say, we're going to go quietly into the night. The Rams defense kind of replaced Aaron Donald with their 2 first picks this year in Jared Verst and Brendan Fisk. We also look at the Lions, however. They were able to keep Ben Johnson. That was their biggest offseason acquisition, was being able to keep Ben Johnson, because their offense is not going to miss a beat. They're not going to have to learn new terminology. They're not going to have to do this, that, or the other thing. It is just going to be, okay, here we go. We're continuing on, fellas. But their defense got so much better with their 2 first-round picks at corner. They basically just said, we're going to lock down the hatches and going to make it really hard for you to throw against us. That's ultimately why I think the Lions are going to win this game, is just that continuous connection on their offense, and they're not going to be able to miss a beat. But I do think the Rams are going to cover this spread, and this is going to be, I think, the best game that we're going to watch this week.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have anything to disagree with, and the only thing I can add too is, Matt Stafford's coming in healthy to start this year as well, and he still has that point to prove to Detroit going back there to win a game. Yeah, we've got to see the AFC Championship rematch on Thursday night. We get to see the NFC Championship, or no, it wasn't, but
We
still,
get to
we
see
get to
the
see the
NFC
divisional round matchup.
divisional game, yeah.
Yeah, and it was one of the best games we saw in the playoffs last year, was that Rams-Lions game, and I expect to see the exact same thing this year. In this game, it is, like you said, going to be the best game of the week. I'm really glad they put it on Sunday night. I do think the Lions are likely going to pull out the win here, but the Rams are going to keep it close and cover that spread.
Now talking about the Monday night game of the week, where we have the San Francisco 49ers taking on the New York Football Jets.
Yeah, this is not going to be as good of a game. I know there's a lot of people that are still super hyped on Old Man Rodgers. I'm not. The Jets are still going to be good. You got Brees Hall, you got
Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams.
Garrett Wilson, thank you. There's some good pieces to this offense, but they're not going to be able to hang with this 49ers team. This 49ers team is, their window for the Super Bowl is closing rapidly. They are going to come out hard, and they are going to smack the Jets in the mouth. I think the 49ers run away with this game. We'll probably see some good garbage time plays from Brees Hall, from Garrett Wilson, from Aaron Rodgers, if he can make it past 2 plays. Other than that, it's the 49ers had a tumultuous offseason. They had some issues with Trent Williams, with Brandon Ayuk, but they've signed those guys. They've got that all cleared up, settled going into the season. They know what they have. They can go forward and go, look, we can just focus on getting to the Super Bowl again. And that is, I think, what they're going to do. If they stay healthy, they have a good shot at being the best team in the NFL this
year. Yeah. Robert Saleh, head coach of the Jets, was asked this week, is he going to be able to have a deep breath and a sigh of relief going after play number 5 after watching his offense? And he goes, yep, it's going to be hard not to. So again, like I'm higher on Aaron Rodgers than you are. Like I said, I still have a lot of concerns with Aaron Rodgers. 40 years old, coming off of an Achilles tear, that's going to be really hard for him to come back from. But we do look at this Jets defense. They are one of the best defenses in the NFL. Sauce Gardner and the rest of the company are really, really good. Robert Saleh knows how to get that defense running and being a smooth operation. Aaron Rodgers, however, has struggled against Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers over his past, whether it's been in the playoffs or regular season. I still think the 49ers I still think the Jets are going to be able to move the ball, but I think ultimately this 49ers team is just going to be too much in this game. The 49ers are minus 4.5 points, and I think they both win and they cover that. They are going to be a very, very tough team to beat. Everything seemingly was almost going wrong for the 49ers this offseason, and then it just all of a sudden became that it was working out to be right. And at the end of the day, this 49ers team, you hit the nail on the head. They are potentially going to be the best team in the NFL the entire season. Again, we're going to see some garbage time points from Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson in this game. 49ers walk away with it.
Yeah.
Normally, if you are coming back from last year and watching, you would expect us to do the Thursday night game for next week, but we're going to actually record that later, and that will be its own little video that we talk about that's going to come out about Tuesday or Wednesday. So we won't talk about that. And since we already did the power rankings in the last video, since we were talking about that, we're not going to do it this week. So yeah, power rankings and that type of stuff are going to be coming next week, but the Thursday night game that we usually do at this segment, we're actually going to be moving that to a video segment of its own. Nice little short video for you to take a peek at, so we won't be chatting about that here. But some interesting stuff is going to be happening. A contract for your Pittsburgh Steelers came out and was signed.
A couple of them, actually. They managed to get a couple of extensions done in the last week and a half, which was nice to see. Just yesterday, we saw Pat Fryermuth get himself extended 4 years, $48.4 million. This is a good extension, in my opinion. It locks up a key piece of the offense, probably the only consistent piece right now outside of Najee Harris. That's another deal I would like to see get done. But if Fryermuth can stay healthy and he has a top 20 quarterback even, he has the potential to be a top 5 tight end in this. You know, I know that might be a little bit biased in my opinion, but like we've seen how good he can be when he's healthy, and that was with guys like Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett throwing him the ball. If he's got guys like Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, I think that's just going to make him better. And then whoever is there next year, again, it's just going to make him better going forward. This was an excellent re-sign by the Steelers, getting this done and out of the way now. Don't have to worry about it next season.
Yeah, I liked the deal for Pat Fryermuth. I think when he's healthy, I don't think he's a top 5 tight end. I think he's consistently in that top 10 for sure. But the big thing with him is he's going to need to stay healthy. We've seen every single year, it seems like the inability to play a full 17 game season. And if you're going to pay a guy like that, and granted, it's 4 years, 43 million,
48 million.
48 million. Yeah, so he's
So about 12 million a year.
yeah, and that's not cheap for a tight end, but we've definitely seen some higher contracts for sure when it comes to the tight end spot. But it's the big question here is, can he stay healthy?
Yeah.
That is without a doubt the question, because that's been his biggest issue. And if he stays healthy, I think he's your best offensive player.
Yep.
Not
hands
just
down,
not just most
especially-
consistent.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree. And then the other extension we saw was Cameron Hayward got himself 3-year extension, 45 million. I'm really happy to see Cam get this extension. You know,
Yep.
he's been asking for it, and he deserves it. This will guarantee that we see him retire as a Pittsburgh Steeler. You know, he had a bit of a down year last year with some injuries, but when he's out there, people forget, like, you should still be considering him a top 5 defensive lineman in this league. You know, especially with his ability to play every single position along that D line. He can slot in there at every spot and make an impact on almost every play. So another one, if he stays healthy, even at his advanced age, he's still one of the best to do it at that D line position.
He's what, 34 years old at this point? 34?
I think 33, 34, yeah.
Yeah, so he's definitely getting up there, but like what you're saying, when he's healthy and he's out there and with the talent that's around him, especially with this age, having, TJ Watt, having Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith out there, those are extremely helpful for him, where he doesn't have to do it by himself like what we've seen him have to do in years past.
Yeah, and especially with the emergence of Keanu Benton last year, that definitely helped. And as
Helps a
I
lot.
talked about a couple weeks ago when we were talking about guys we're watching, DeMarvin Leal, if he can make that step this year as well and take some more of that pressure off Cam Hayward, that'll help keep him healthier longer and ensure that he can make a greater impact on this defense.
Yeah, it's a team and it's a very good move for the Steelers. It's one of those things where you have guys that have just been consistently good on your team that you always want to see just be able to stick around with your team and retire. Like he's one of those guys that you just want to see him stay a one team player because he's the identity. He's one of those guys where you want to have him basically be the coach on the field and basically go, this is our standard for the new guys coming in. If you don't follow these standards, you're not going to have a great time here because this is what we are about. And I've talked about it in the past. Maybe the standard in Pittsburgh kind of needs to change a little bit, but I think that's more of a Mike Tomlin issue as opposed to a Cam Hayward issue. But yeah, a great move to just extend him and to keep him here long term for sure. And I think you're kind of frozen a little bit, but I think we're potentially coming back. Oh, maybe. A little bit frozen. You there, buddy?
I'm here still.
Okay, yeah.
It was having some struggles.
Yeah, I saw you talking, but I wasn't getting any audio, and then you were just kind of freezing a little bit. But yeah, so we do have a little bit of breaking news throughout today. Some news about Jordan Love, as we did talk about him earlier. It is just an MCL sprain, so he is not going to be missing the season, which is good news for the Green Bay Packers, but he is expected to be sidelined for 3 to 4 weeks, if not potentially a little bit longer. So rough for the Green Bay Packers, who are definitely losing out on that one, but ultimately it is a lot better and than a lot of people were potentially expecting, because whenever you have anything to do with the knee or the ankle area, those are rough situations to deal with. And so for Jordan Love, ultimately it's fairly good that he's nice and healthy, or he's going to be healthier sooner rather than later.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll get to see Malik Willis show what he can do as a Green Bay Packer over the next few weeks. It'll be interesting to see.
I will say that it's going to be nice to watch the Green Bay Packers potentially go 0-5 to start the year. That's going to be really nice. And again, they play the Bears twice this year, so that's another 2 losses. So yeah, it's going to be great to watch. And then they're going to have to play the Lions twice, so that's just 9 losses right there.
Yep.
I have to have that hope, but yeah, this very good news. I know I don't have anything else to chat about here today. For yourself, Sterling.
No.
Well, great to have football back. Thank you all very much for joining us here today on the OneIQ Football Talk podcast. For Sterling, I'm Brendan, saying see you next time. Peace.